Jimmy McAlliott found the net. Goal for Wednesday.
Terrific goal by Shayna.
Chris Waddle, is he going to have a crack?
Oh, he does, and it's goal. Still Glenn Wheeler. Aidan Fred wins the goal. It's the time for a winner.
Changing the direction of the River Don, turning Hillsborough into a block of flats and attempting to sell unrefined African gold. Hello and welcome to Wednesday Till I Die podcast. I'm James Mappin. I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by the Times journalist and writer of that article that landed earlier this week surrounding Sheffield Wednesday and Depon Chansiri. It's Mr. Paul Hirst. Paul, how are you, mate? You all right?
Yeah, I'm all right, thank you. Yeah, just laughing at those. You still can't believe that is the thing, but it is. You know, that's our owner. That's what he's up to. So yeah, it's barely believable, is it?
I was going to come on to that, Paul, a little bit later, but you've just said it there. I was going to ask you, at the point where you were putting this article together, was there any point where you're speaking to people thinking, have I heard that right? Is that actually true what you've said there? Was there any moments like that?
Yeah, plenty. I mean, we're probably talking like double figures, really. You know, particularly about the gold. You know, they're trying to sell half a ton of unrefined gold in Uganda that's currently in Uganda, and I've seen the thing is, I was so sure when I published it because I'd seen correspondence from Chansiri with people who he was trying to get to sell this gold for him, and I saw a picture of the gold and it looks like it's like a pirate's chest. You know, it's just ridiculous. Really, it's kind of. So, it is barely believable, but you see it in black and white and you think, oh, am I being conned here? And so you ring someone else up and they say, oh, no, he asked me to do that as well. So, and it's just, it is making the barely believable seem truthful and, whether it is truthful. And then, you dig around and, two or three or four people say the same thing, then, they can't all be pulling your leg, can they? It's all true, yeah. And it's there in black and white. So exactly. Black and white and gold, yeah,
yeah, black and gold until it's
sold. Yeah.
Paul, before we get into kind of the more of the nitty gritty and stuff, just going to talk a little bit about yourself. Like before we get into your love for Sheffield Wednesday, obviously you're a football journalist, have been for many years, covering Manchester United, which I'm sure has been fantastic over the past 24 hours. Man City as well, and you've been out as far as Qatar for the World Cup. But I mean, what was that like? That was a bit of an experience, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's the second World Cup I did. I did the one in Brazil as well. That was in 2014. That was amazing. That was I probably did the best one then. It's not going to get any better than that one. The one in Brazil. Such a great footballing country, such an amazing cities, amazing attitude of the people, really relaxed and just fun loving. And then, Qatar was a different experience. Everything was like polished and perfect, and almost I just felt it was a bit plastic in some places. I did the Euros last year, and it was just completely different. You had fans in the street everywhere in Germany, and everyone was mingling. And Qatar was almost like it's sort of like manufactured fun. Or you kind of like you go here. Everything was kind of too perfect, really. Kind of got, underground travel everywhere that was amazing, and it was
conditioning in the stadiums and stuff. Like that,
I don't know.
The big question is, Paul, did they have running water in the North Stand? That's the big
Well, it's funny you mentioned Man United. I was at Blundell Park last night for the Grimsby game, the Grimsby Man United, and I was sat in the main stand there, which has been. It's been there since 1901, and I was sat right at the back of the stadium, right back of the stand, and I was looking up. I was thinking, these bolts look really well tightened, really good, And then I was thinking, next time I go to Hillsborough, I'll be sitting up at the North Stand going, Christ, that looks dodgy, It looks a bit, I wish we were back at Blundell Park, I feel safer there.
Yeah. So those words have never been uttered ever before, Paul.
Yeah.
things more closer to home then, rather than Qatar, you know, and to be honest, the things why people are probably listening to this, obviously you're a Wednesday fan, aren't you? I mean, I don't want you to give away your age, but although by answering this next question, we probably have a bit of an inkling. When was your first game then? You know, what was the first game that you went to as a Wednesday fan?
I'm not bashful, I'll tell you my age. I look about 60, but I'm 40. I tough paper round, you know, doing Valley Weekender and all that. So I was probably, I can't remember my first game, but I remember sort of when I started going was 90, sort of like 91, 92 or 92, 93, that era. You know, what an era, you know, so blessed with, yeah, you know, just the I've got some of my mates, obviously like younger Wednesday fans and like under the age of 30 and they just didn't get to experience that era, and I just feel so sorry for them that they missed the Waddle, Des Walker, Sheridan, Hirst, Nielsen era. So yeah, I started watching them then. We used to get, my uncle used to work at Wednesday, so we used to get free tickets now and again. So my dad took me. Dad's a Blade, so he kind of yeah, he's not a massive Blade, to be fair. He's quite. He was you know, well, it's free. We're from Rotherham, so you know, it's kind of, we got a free ticket anywhere you go, don't you? So, yeah, Rotherham Owl as well, by the way, not one of these turncoats, which there are many. So we went, and I just remember in that first, I remember some of the memories of like the first few games. I remember watching Gaza and Lineker play at Hillsborough. I remember watching Klinsmann score at Hillsborough. I think that was on his debut as well. Yeah. And then other matches, I remember watching like, you know, Coventry play at Wednesday. I remember my dad telling me that, you know, what Steve Grizovic is like one of the best goalkeepers you'll see, and you know that kind of era. So yeah, back when we were good, you know, back when we could see David Hirst wallop a goal in from like 25 yards with his left foot without even thinking about it, and you know, even players like Paul Hirst. I mean, you know, he's just an amazing kind of player. So
we'd love to have players like that right now, you know.
Distant dream, yeah.
I mean, as I've mentioned many times on this podcast, my earliest memories when we got relegated at the Premier League. So I am one of those fans that you just mentioned that haven't seen us in the they haven't seen us in the Premier League or anything like that. But I mean, let's move on to current times then, if we can. What's your kind of take on the whole situation? Because I think a lot of us are getting quite numb to it all. It's just one thing after another, and you know, we're even celebrating things like that the players are going to get paid on time right now, which seems an absolutely crazy situation. But what's your take on the whole thing, Paul?
It's so saddening, the whole situation, isn't it? It's really, I find it really depressing. I always think back to when we got the League One playoff final, when we beat Barnsley and we beat Peterborough in that amazing semi-final comeback. I remember like coming out of Wembley that day thinking, God, you know, I'm proud to be a Wednesday fan, you know, and having been there the night before in Covent Garden and, you know, seeing all the fans there thinking, what a massive club this is. And then, you know, winning the match and getting promoted, thinking, right, this is probably the start of, you know, something good, or at least we're going in the right direction. And then Darren Moore gets sacked within about 3 weeks. You know, whether or not that was the right call, you know, whatever. I've sort of mixed feelings on it. But then, you know, to have the roller coaster that's preceded it is just typical of Wednesday, really, typical of the Chansiri era. We sort of build up and start getting a bit of enthusiasm, you know, like we did at the start of Carlos's reign. And then it always seems to be a point with Wednesday where Chansiri sort of steps in or turns the tap off or wants to be the centre of attention. You know, I always think coming towards the end, middle of last season, when we were, you know, we were always like thereabouts, weren't we? And you know, let's face it, last season the Championship was quite an open league. I didn't think it was a great quality league. Outside the top two, I didn't think there was much going. I mean, when Leeds came to Hillsborough and hammered us, I just thought that was an amazing performance for them, as much as it pains me to say it. But I didn't. The rest of the season, I was thinking, you know, even when we lost to Burnley away, I didn't think they were outstanding. But anyway, because we were two or three players. We were two centre halves short, weren't we? Maybe a striker in January. So that for me, that point would have been, if you'd invested in those players, then that would have probably pushed us over the line and at least got us into the top six or got us closer to it. But it's just that little bit extra cash, little bit of extra investment. It just never seems to be there. And then once fans get annoyed, once manager gets annoyed, then Chansiri makes it all about himself. Announces these fans forums, which are anything but. I mean, I was going to go to one, but I texted my mate who'd been before, and he said, just don't bother because it's not a fans forum. It's just a soapbox for him to stand on and shout at people and settle scores. And so I'm glad he
Paul,
didn't.
have you been to these before? Like, in your job and stuff, following Man United, Man City, like, do they have these fans forum? Are these kind of the norm? Because obviously, as a Sheffield Wednesday fan, all you do is consume everything about your club. There's 92 football clubs. They all do their own, they all play football, but they all go about it all differently. You don't really get to understand like what happens elsewhere. Are these the norm? Like,
well, I can only go on what Man United, Man City do, and they do have fans forums. I think United have got two tiers of it. One's like with like the proper like execs, so they'll speak to like Radcliffe and Omar Barada and all the top brass. But they're all behind closed doors. They're all, there's no media allowed, no, wider public allowed. It's just like probably like a dozen people sat around the table. And to be fair, they release the minutes, and which are quite sort of, quite forensic. Really, they're quite detailed, and they're quite often a good source of stories particularly for Man United, because sometimes a fan has probably got. A gripe that I might not have heard of. It might be a disabled fan who can't get proper access to the toilets or something like that, and then you develop that as a story. You ring them up and you try to get like the background of the story. But in terms of like a mass attendance, involving the fans, I think it is quite rare. So maybe we should be praising him for organising them, but they're just not. It's not a debate, is it? It's not a forum. It's not a debate. It's just a slanging match, and it just is so unedifying. And like I say, he always wants to have the mic. I always think back to Cisco's unveiling. Poor guy, when he was like, "This is our new manager," and then Chansiri just goes on a rant about Carlton Palmer for however long it was, and I just remember looking at Cisco's face, and he's thinking, "What the hell have I got myself in for here?" So yeah, I don't.
That is what Depon Chansiri is like. He opens his mouth, and you just cringe, don't you, every single time, because it's going to be. Well, it's great for us. There's loads to talk about, but it's ironic though at the moment how you wanted him to keep his mouth shut for so long, and now he's doing just that. He's keeping his mouth shut, and actually, this is the point where we need him to come out and say something and kind of reassure us or say that he's going to sell the football club. But yeah, let's move on to kind of the article that you wrote then. Sheffield Wednesday, the inside story of a famous club in chaos. First of all, what prompted you to look deeper into the inner workings of the club? Was it just born out of pure curiosity as being a Wednesday fan, or was it something different?
Yeah, again, like what happened towards the end of last season, it just really I just thought this is as well as being a nightmare for us as fans, it's just a great story. Well, not great, it's an interesting story. How they could go from being so close to the playoffs to having 15 players and having and not paying the staff and all that. So I just said to I was talked to my editor quite a lot about Wednesday, because he's like a Leyton Orient fan, so we have a lot of football league chat. And he was saying, we always talk about what's going on at Wednesday, and he said, why don't you do a piece on them? And I said, yeah, I want to, but I'd also quite like a holiday, get that out of the way first. So all this is going on, and he's sort of like rumbling on, and obviously, like you said, I cover Man City and Man United as well, so that's more than it's a pretty busy job. But I just said I really need like a week, more or less, for 5 days to get my teeth stuck into it. And they always say that. I just said to him, "Can I say it's off diary?" So I'm not contactable about any other stories. So I'll be focused completely on. He just left me to my own devices basically. So then just lined up a load of interviews. I got a couple of contacts who were involved at Wednesday at one level or another, and then they put me in touch with other people, and it just. I mean, the person who got in touch with me originally said, like, be careful. It is a bit of a rabbit warren. This you can sort of dive in, and then you just fully immersed in it, and that's exactly what happened. I just became, speaking to someone who had this problem with chance area. Then he'd say, "Oh, have you spoken to so and so?" And I'd be like, "Oh no," passed on his number, and then before, at the end of the 5 days or 6-7 days, what it ended up being, I got a sort of a file on my laptop of interviews that I'd done, and there must have been about 15 separate interviews there, and an evidence folder as well that had all that corroborated some of the stories that I'd seen that had been, and all these interviews were done off the record. They were in confidence. Someone had explained to me what had been going on, but they didn't want their name connected to it, which is fair enough. That's how.
Yeah.
I know some fans say, "Oh, saying this, there's no name on it." You just you can't. It's a source. As a journalist, you've got to protect your sources. It's like number one rule of journalism, because if you can't find a source that trusts you, then there's no point in even trying to dig for any stories. You got to be trustworthy. So that was my first aim, to kind of protect the identities of everyone who was involved. To the point where there was some stuff that didn't even make the piece because it was. Because it would have been, and some of the stuff was dynamite, even the stuff that I didn't even include in the piece, but I just couldn't use it because it would have blown the sources that I was speaking to. And I just, no, that's never, I'd never do anything like that. So,
yeah. I mean, the people that you spoke to, obviously, you can't say names. I don't want you to either. You just said that. Were they quite forthcoming in telling you some of these things? Because obviously, normally when you speak to people, they might not share these things for exactly that same reason. But I'm getting the impression at the moment, with the amount of stuff that you're hearing on various pieces, obviously some of it's false, some of it turns out to be true. A few like whistleblowers coming out. It sounds like at the moment there's a lot of people wanting to just share how bad or how crazy the whole situation is, and certain things that he's done, and they're quite willing to share that information now.
Yeah, you sort of, you're right. It's just you've got to know which doors to knock on, basically. But I start talking to someone, and they'd sort of like start opening up a bit. And there are a lot of people that are really annoyed with Chance series. So it took only like a gentle bit of persuasion and for them to start talking, and then I'd sort of repeat what I'd heard from other people. I'd say, "Oh, do you hear about this? This silly thing about the River Don?" And like, "Yeah, that's right, we've heard about that." And so it's kind of, I think once you start impressing upon the sources that you've got, that you've got a deep knowledge of what's going on, then they start to trust you more, because they know that you've already made contact with people who know the madness that's gone on there. So yeah, I would say it wasn't easy, but it does help when you've got people who are they're annoyed at the owner, whether they work at the club or used to work at the club or know someone who does work there or who's had dealings with him. It's like I say, it's just about knowing which people to contact.
Yeah, like what was the kind of general mood, would you say, from the people that you've spoken at? Was it like kind of anger, or was it just kind of what was it like speaking to them?
Well, those interviews that I was talking about, those like 50 interviews, whatever, they were all. I'd say there wasn't one interview that was less than half an hour long. It was all just like almost getting it off their chest. It was almost like therapy for them, like, and it was almost. I don't want to sound like a hero here or whatever, but they've all been saying, we've been waiting for someone to come and do something on him, or do a big piece on him, or just shine a light on this. And that's not taken away from like the guys who work for the Star, like Joe Cran and Alex Miller, and the BBC Radio Sheffield guys like Rob State and Andy Giddins. They've they've really kind of like shone a light on this in their own publications. It's just they've been banging the drum for ages. It's just getting someone in the national media to shine a light on it as well. So it's all part of the same. It's all part of the same sort of. We've all been talking to the same people. It's just a question of sort of getting more eyeballs on it, and then hoping that it grows as a story.
And that's the thing, isn't it? The national media now have really kind of taken to it. I think it was the Leicester game. I was speaking to one journalist. He was saying that that's the most represented fixture in the weekend. I know it was obviously on Sunday. Right. There was only one game on Sunday. Well, there was the Community Shield, I think, as well on that Sunday. But there was more national journalists there than any other fixture in that weekend. And it does seem like now, people are taking notice now, aren't they? And actually, wanting to, well, obviously write about the piece, but also, I suppose, help in some way, shape, or form. And it's good to see that, like I said, people like yourself are actually talking about it now. Yeah,
and to be fair, there's people like Mike Keegan at the Daily Mail, Mike McGrath, the Daily Telegraph. There's been a couple of stories in the Guardian as well about Wednesday. So it's the people. There are people who are interested there. We all obviously we think Wednesday are a huge club because we are. Well, because they are
massive. No, because, massive. Just say it. Paul,
say it once already. So, but when people, it's like my editor always says, "It's a huge club," and we always think it is, but like outside of our club, people think, it is a huge club, and a few of my mates, they're Man City fans, and when we played them in the cup, pre-COVID, just before COVID, wasn't it? They were all talking about how excited they were about going to Hillsborough, and so we are still viewed as a big club from the outside. So when we do hit crisis like this, and there's a clear reason why, then people get there's going to be interest there, and you just kind of hope that sort of carries on from here.
Paul, there's the meme, the Mick McCarthy meme, it can't get any worse, and he says it can. Like, where do you see the end, like, in terms of Depon Chansiri? Because, I think there's been a lot of opportunities where he could have left the football club, and he hasn't. And, the squad is very thin. Obviously, I mentioned it sounds like wages are going to be paid this month. It looks like he's going to struggle on certainly for this month anyway, but then we've got other big milestones like season tickets coming up that obviously going to be renewed, and then the transfer windows and the injuries that are going to happen and all that sorts of imminent relegation, I suppose, this season as well. Like where do you see it ending in your kind of personal opinion?
Well, if you'd asked me that question about 5-6 days ago, I would have said in the next week or so. I all the messages I was getting from people who were looking into buying the club or who've certainly got a connection to it were very positive. They were saying, "Oh, we've heard that he's more open to selling than ever before." But then all of a sudden, he changed like that, and he said, "No, I'm not selling for anyone. Not selling to anyone. Not unless it's something like 100 million. It's not worth 100 million. It's just ridiculous, isn't it?" So to me, the only way that he will be removed is by the regulator, which presents is I'm a backer of that, the independent football regulator, if it has got the teeth to do things like that. And the problem with the regulator at the moment, or certainly for us, is that it only came into existence on July the 21st officially of this year, and at present it doesn't have a chief executive, it doesn't have a board. And it also needs secondary legislation to actually give it the power to remove owners. That's still got to go through Parliament. So, I've been asking around, see how long will that last? And a good and optimistic estimate is probably November, when they'll actually start digging into Wednesday or start having a proper look into Chansiri, or actually enacting these
It's not going to be a
powers
quick
that they're
fix,
supposed
though,
to
is
be.
it, Paul? It's not going to be like just immediate. It's not going to be right. He's gone in on the 2nd of November. I'm sure there's going to be legal processes. There's going to be investigative work. It's not just going to be kind of immediate. That's it. He's gone, and obviously we've seen. I know obviously this wasn't part of the regulator. We've seen at Reading that the EFL, had asked him to sell the club, and then again that opens up the whole other sort of problems as well. You need people to come in and actually buy the club. I mean, I think we are an attractive proposition, even though we are in a bit of a mess. But it's not just going to be a quick fix, is it?
No, and that is the problem that the thing that has sort of boosted Chancery at the moment is that they got a £4 million payment from the Premier League, solidarity payment, a biannual one, and is it 600 grand or 400, I think, from the EFL. So that's coming to the club this month. I think some of it's been siphoned off to pay some of the transfer fees that we owed other clubs. And the wage bill has gone down quite significantly, hasn't it? If you lose Josh Windass, if you lose Callum Patterson, Gassama, etc., then the wage bill is going to be cut by quite a lot, really. So he can, I heard that it's just kind of difficult, isn't he? I mean, God knows what's happening with his money, whether he's actually got any or not. But I heard that he was confident that he could pay the players or pay the staff this month, but who knows, how he's come to that, thought. But so I just think, in terms of the regulator, to me, it's an open and shut case. You've not. How would let's not forget also that Sheffield Wednesday is a community asset. It's not some plaything for a wealthy businessman, is it? A lot of people in that community, the foundation as well, isn't there? And that a lot of people are really invested in that football club. So it's if you're a proper government and if you want to, I mean, it's also a bloody open goal in terms of a vote winner, isn't it? Sort football out. Get rid of dodgy owners in football or questionable owners. I mean, it seems so simple to me. Like you say, if you can't pay the wages of the staff and the players, then you are not you're incompetent, aren't you? You are completely the wrong kind of person to be running a football club. It's just a case whether that the regulator has that teeth, has those teeth, and whether they can get round to it quickly. For me, even though they've not got a chief exec or a board or whatever, surely they've got an entry. They've got to have people looking at that now and just thinking, right, this is task number one. This is an open goal for us. We get rid of this guy who can't pay staff, who who's who only just manages to get a safety certificate for one of the stands at the ground, and who has been accused of all these things in our article and others, was clearly just not up to it. So
they can start gathering some information now, can't they? Really, on all that.
Yeah.
Paul, before we wrap things up, obviously, I think one thing that all this saga has done, although if you look on social media, you'll probably disagree in some respects, but I feel like it's brought the fan base together. I know there's a lot of infighting, and all these people saying you should go to the matches, you shouldn't go, and all that sort of stuff, which is happening. But I think one thing that it has done certainly brought the players and the fans a lot closer together. But also, I think the fan base as well. We are all in it together, aren't we, Paul? It's just one of those things. I'd rather it not. I'd rather be talking about whether we play someone in the number 10 or in a double pivot or whatever else, rather than talking about wages and dodgy owners. But it has brought the fan base together.
Yeah, and that's all the fans were supposed to meet Chancery today, weren't they, at the engagement panel? Or was it yesterday, wasn't it? But they all boycotted it, which, to be fair, I looked at the Supporters Trust put out a list, didn't they, of requirements for them that had to be met if they were going to attend. And one of them was media presence, which is, I would say this, obviously, as a reporter, but, I just think that is why not? If the thing that annoys me more than anything else, and I guess everyone really, is a lack of transparency. That is if he's got the money and he thinks he's a competent person to run our club, then show us where your money's coming from. Show us that you've got enough to to keep us running, and you're not going to run us into the ground, because that will, that's the proof's in the pudding, isn't it? Really, if you've got not got enough money, then you're not going to be able to run the club properly. But yeah, no, I take it on the fans, everyone coming together. That the other, it's not just that as well. It's the Wrexham fans, the Leicester fans, and Bolton fans as well.
I must admit, the Leicester game, it was quite moving. I wasn't there. I watched it. And when you see all the Leicester fans standing up and applauding, again, the same thing happened with Wrexham. We then obviously went on to score moments after that. But it's great, but it's also a little bit annoying when you've got those down the road showing you a bit of sympathy. I'd rather them not, but still, it's like the whole football family all coming together and actually, like you can put the rivalries aside for a moment. You choose your colours, or sometimes you don't get any choice as to which colours you get. But it's all coming together for that one common goal.
I did think, like, when I was going, I always go down for a drink at half time because I need it. I need a pint to get through after what's happened in the first half. But I did go down after, just went to the toilet in the half time in the Stoke game, and there was no one at the queue for that. I just thought that's fair play to everyone. For not. I think that when I came out, there was some guy buying some sweets for his kids, and fair enough. I mean, try explaining that to a kid, why you can't have some bloody wine gums or whatever, So, but a lot of, I do think that will hit him. That will hurt him. Someone told me that the takings were down like 80% for that Stoke game, and that's going to ultimately hit him where it hurts. And like you said, it'll be interesting to see if he does limp on till December and he announces his early bird tickets, season tickets, and whether actually anyone buys them. Because if no one buys them, then that's a huge hit to his revenue stream. So
exactly.
Fun times ahead.
I know. I had hair when I started. It's all gone.
Me too. Yeah.
Paul, massive thanks for joining me, mate. Do really appreciate it as always.
No problem.
I just wish that you were talking about Sheffield Wednesday in more of a positive light. But here we are. But no, Paul. Massive thanks for taking time out of your day to chat with me.
All right, my pleasure.
No worries.